Would you like to try painting rocks but don't know where to start? Do you lack confidence in your drawing or painting skills, or are you struggling to get an end result you are happy with? Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Nairi and my aim is to help you improve your art skills so you can create painted rocks that you are proud of. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I created this red barn rock. I'll take you through both how to draw and to paint the rock. If you don't have a great initial drawing, you'll never have a great painting, so there's a whole section in this video where I go through this step by step. If you are new to my channel and like this video, please click subscribe below. And if you've watched a few of my previous videos and want to jump straight to the drawing the design or painting steps, you'll find the timestamps below in the description. So let's get started. First off, you're going to need a rock. For this design you can literally select any shape and size rock that you like. You'll need white acrylic paint and a flat brush for applying the base coat, a pencil and eraser for a quick SketchUp of what you're going to be painting, an assortment of bright acrylic paint colours. For this rock I've used Uni Posca paint pens. The colours I've used are listed below in the description. I tend to use a mixture of both PC3M and PC5M thickness paint pens, and for the black outlining and white corrections or touch-ups I also use Uni Posca pens, but the PC1MR thickness. This is as fine a pen as you can get in the Uni Posca range. And finally, you'll need a sealer. So step 1. The first thing you're going to need is a rock, which I buy from my local landscaping supply or hardware store. When selecting a rock for painting, if you can find one that has both a smooth surface and a flat face, this will make drawing your design onto the rock and painting it much easier. Step 2 is preparing the rock for painting. There are two things to do when you are preparing a rock. First, give it a wash in warm soapy water. I just use dishwashing liquid and a kitchen scouring pad and then rinse it off and leave it to dry. Once your rock is dry, I recommend applying 2 base coats of white acrylic paint. This is not essential, but it will make your colours much more vibrant. For this design I base coat the entire front face of the rock and I use a flathead brush, as this gives you the best result as it helps to spread the paint smoothly, giving you a nice finish. Before you start applying your base coat, make sure your rock isn't hot from sitting in the sun to dry, as this makes the paint dry too quickly and will limit the amount of time you have to spread and smooth out the paint. If you're having issues with your base coat drying too quickly, you can always dip your paintbrush in some water to help rehydrate the acrylic paint. Finally, it is really important to let your base coat dry completely before moving on to the design. Step 3 is drawing the design onto the rock. For any design, regardless of how easy it is, I recommend doing a quick SketchUp on paper first to get familiar with it. So let's go through how to draw the red barn. First, draw a square and then a vertical line that cuts it in half. These will be the 2 barn doors. Now draw another vertical line to the left of the barn doors and one to the right of the barn doors that is roughly the same width as one barn door, and join these lines up along the bottom. And then just slightly above the doors, draw a horizontal line joining up the 2 vertical lines on the left and right. Now draw a big cross through the barn doors from the top left to the bottom right and from the top right to the bottom left. The 2 lines should cross on the vertical centre line of the doors. Now add 4 hinges, which are just small rectangles. The barn doors will be red with a white wood panel trim. So now we are going to draw triangles just inside the existing lines of the doors, which gives you the boundaries of the red sections. To keep this barn super simple, we are drawing a front-on view rather than a 3-dimensional side angle view. Now draw the roof in, which has 2 different angles. The roof section closest to the ground should be drawn at roughly a 45-degree angle from the sidewall. You want this section of the roof to continue up until it crosses the vertical line which divides the side section of the barn in half. Next, draw a vertical centre line through the barn which will provide you with a guide for where the centre of the roof needs to meet up. The point where the roof meets up should be about the same height above the line marking the top of the first story as the height from the ground to the top of the first story, so that the height of both stories of the barn is the same. Now draw the last section of the roof by starting at the point where the first section of the roof meets the vertical line, which divides the side section of the barn in half, and going up to the centre point you marked, which makes the second story the same height as the first story. At the top point of the roof, draw a little cross for a weather vane. Then in the centre of the top story, draw an arched window that starts roughly halfway across the left barn door and finishes roughly halfway across the right barn door. The top of the arch should go to roughly the point where the roof angles change. Now draw a bumpy cloud-like shape on the windowsill of the barn, which will be hay, and draw a curve around the window for the white wooden surround. Next, let's draw the fence by extending the line across the bottom of the barn to both sides. Then draw another horizontal line which starts at the same height as the vertical centre of the barn doors. Then you can draw a few posts and rails on the fence and add a few clouds in the sky. Now that you can draw the design on paper, repeat these same steps onto your rock. The next step is to get on and start painting the rock. Whilst you might be tempted at this stage to draw black outlines around your image on the rock to make it easier to paint, I would avoid doing this. Drawing your image in black on your rock with a permanent marker might seem like a great idea, as the paint pens are water soluble and therefore won't lift or smudge permanent marker lines. However, you might find that when you apply your sealer at the end, because it will be solvent based so that it can handle harsh outdoor conditions, it may liquefy your permanent marker, which could result in your black lines bleeding and losing their sharp, crisp edges. An alternative is to draw black outlines with a superfine Posca paint pen, however this is less than ideal too, as because they are water-based, when you go to colour the image in with the other paint pens, you may find they keep picking up black on their nibs and muddying your colours, as well as requiring you to constantly clean off your nibs on paper. So if you can, stick to just using your pencil sketch. This rock is super quick and easy to paint as all the colours are solid block colours with no shading. I usually like to start by using a white paint pen to cover any pencil markings I don't want, as this saves time later down the track, as although Posca paint pens are quite opaque, sometimes the pencil lines will show through, but for whatever reason this time I've started straight into the colour. I've painted the red barn first and then added the large blocks of background colour. I paint completely over the fence markings as it is easy to draw them on over the top later. I have also added a few gentle curves to create some hills in the background. When painting the sky, I've chosen to paint around the clouds just to reduce how much white I need to draw on later. When painting the sky, don't paint right up to the red barn. Instead, leave a narrow white band beside the entire roof line, as this will become the white wooden trim on the edge of the roof. Don't worry if you forget to do this, you can easily draw the white band on over the top later. Make sure you apply at least 2 coats of each colour so that you get a bright, vibrant and even paint finish. If you find it painful to watch paint dry, I use a hairdryer to speed up the process. Posca paint pens do dry very quickly, so just give it a quick blast as you don't want your rock to heat up too much. Now I'm having to go back over the red with white to cover up all the pencil lines as they are showing through. And I find the white has better opacity, so it's a good colour to cover up anything you don't want to see before adding your actual colour back on over the top. You'll notice that my white paint pen is picking up some of the red and starting to go a bit pink. It doesn't matter at all, as you can simply scribble on a piece of paper and the nib will come clean. You won't damage your paint pens, I promise. On this rock I've used both PC 3M thickness pens and PC 5M thickness pens. In general, for rock painting, if you're only going to buy one thickness pen, which is what most people do, I'd recommend PC 3M pens as they are the most versatile and allow you to do detail. I would also recommend having a white and black PC 1MR thickness pen. Once your sky has enough coats, you can come back over it with a white paint pen to improve the shape of the clouds and make sure they feel as if they're positioned in front of the blue of the sky. You'll likely need to do a few coats to get a nice bright crisp white. While I'm waiting for them to dry, I'll start painting the fence as the grass has had all the paint coats it needs. Remember, you've got a horizontal line that follows the bottom of the barn and another horizontal line that starts roughly midway up the height of the barn doors. Then add the posts. I paint one directly against the side of the barn and then space them evenly along the length of the fence. Next you can paint in the rails on an angle. Next come back with your white paint pen to add layers and clean up all the white areas remaining. Clean your paint pen nib off by scribbling on paper as often as you need and add as many coats as you need to get a bright, crisp, clean white. I now draw a dark green horizontal line just under the fence the entire length of the rock, and add a little squiggle in front of the barn to imply a shadow and make the image feel grounded. Once everything is painted, I use my black PC 1MR paint pen to do the outlining. This is when the painting will really start to come together, but is also the stage where you may feel a bit nervous. Don't worry, if you make mistakes they are very easy to fix, and the more relaxed you are, the easier you will find this. In terms of advice when it comes to black outlining, I'd recommend you move your rock around to whatever position your hand feels comfortable. I'd also recommend you try to have your hand that is painting gently resting on the table or part of the rock to help stabilize it while you paint. And finally, don't feel like you have to do a whole line in one go. Instead, you can apply shorter black lines, which means you are only painting within a comfortable and controllable range of motion. If you make a mistake, just wait for the black paint to dry and then chop with a few layers of the colour you want it to be. You may need to go back over the black line again after this. Also, after you have painted on the black outlines, if you are anything like me, they won't track perfectly against the colours. So you can always go back with your colours and touch up any areas. With this rock I get to the point where I virtually finished painting the rock, and when I draw on the weather vane I don't like the way it overlaps a cloud. So if you make a mistake like this one, now you can see how easily it can be fixed. First I get my black PC 1MR paint pen and draw a new outline on the cloud where I want it to end. Then I paint over the weather vane and the part of the cloud I don't want, the sky blue colour. You'll notice that the pen picks up a bit of the black, so while the first coat is drying, scribble your paint pen on a sheet of paper to clean the nib. And repeat as many coats as you need to get a bright, clean colour. Once it looks good, come back with your fine black paint pen and redraw the edge of the cloud and the weather vane. And finally, I add some horizontal weatherboard lines across the barn as a finishing detail, and you're done! The final step is to seal your rock. Before you put your rock outside in the elements, or inside for that matter, you want to make sure your paint is protected by applying a sealer. I use an exterior grade spray varnish. These should ideally be non-yellowing and have UV stabilizers. Before applying, ensure your paint is completely dry, then I like to apply 2 coats of a gloss varnish over all painted areas. Make sure you apply the sealant outside where you are well ventilated and have a clean, dry, non-fluffy drop cloth underneath. If you can apply light coats, this will avoid the varnish from running. And that's it! If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more, please click like and the subscribe button below.